Game without a league win in 17 attempts, but up against a struggling Portsmouth side, surely that was about to change. Actually, it wasn't. Portsmouth, thanks to Steve Claridge's 18th minute goal, are in the fourth round. Things go from bad to worse for Forest and their manager Dave Bassett, who since that defeat has denied reports that he's resigned at the City Ground.
It's the lower division clubs that always cause West Ham trouble. Swansea defended solidly, attacked with purpose and rattled their Premiership opponents until the raw ends began to show. It all blew up over a delay to a free kick. Quite a lot of people wanted to express an opinion, not all of them verbally. Referee Stephen Lodge had the last word, a caution for Neil Ruddock. Indeed, the Swans looked likely to do in the AXA-sponsored FA Cup what Northampton did in the Worthington Cup when Stuart Roberts popped a cross on the head of Jason Smith. West Ham launched their 17-year-old prodigy Joe Cole then, but it was 30-year-old Julian Dix who drew a huge sigh of relief from Upton Park. But John Hollins went home a proud man.
Pointed to a Tottenham win. They'd met Watford on 3 previous occasions and won all 3. That trend, though, looked like it might change in the very first minute. Richard Johnson scored for Watford. The Spurs, though, quickly drew level. Fox and Anderton with a short corner. And Stefan Iversen, returning from injury, headed the equaliser. Within a minute of that goal, Spurs were in front. Steve Palmer was penalised for handball. Alec Chamberlain guessed right, but Anderton's kick carried too much power. Spurs in charge, and things began to look really rosy when Iversen, showing no ill effects of his recent broken jaw, pounced to score his second of the afternoon and Tottenham's third. Watford, though, was still in the mood for a scrap, and Spurs were caught again on the back foot when Baisley's cross was met by Peter Kennedy. That was the cue again for Spurs to take charge. Hyde's clearance was poor, but Alan Nielsen said thank you very much, and on the stroke of half-time, Spurs led 4-2. The second half inevitably couldn't match the first, and in the dying minutes, Rule Fox added a fifth. 5-2 to Spurs. Watford now left to concentrate on promotion.
A 3-goal lead against opponents from 2 divisions lower down is an invitation to a striker needing to improve his average. Darren Huckerby took advantage of a dispirited Macclesfield. That made it 4-0 to Coventry. By this time, John Aloisi, until recently the First Division's top scorer, had come off the bench, and he set up Huckerby's second and Coventry's fifth. In 17 previous appearances, Huckerby had scored only 4 times, but now George Boateng offered him the chance of a hat-trick. Duly accepted, though only after he'd made it difficult. 7-0 means it's probably safe now to remind Coventry that it's just 10 years since that infamous defeat by Sutton United.
Non-League Southport's Cup heroics came to an end against Leyton Orient, but it took a dubious penalty to set the third division side on their way. Phil Horner was penalised for a foul on Carl Griffiths, and that gave Dean Smith the chance to score from the spot on 60 minutes. The Leyton Orient manager is Tommy Taylor, who was a cup winner with West Ham in the 70s. His team won't harbour those ambitions, but having watched Griffiths finish the tie in some style, they go into round 4 full of confidence. The Cup always brings the best out of Yeovil, and those non-league giants were up to their old tricks at Cardiff after 54 minutes. Carl Dale didn't know too much about the goal, but he didn't care. He was just happy to have scored against his former club. Yeovil had a shot cleared off the line before the Welsh side equalised 6 minutes from time. Another well-worked corner fell to Kevin Nugent, who took his chance. Yeovil were aggrieved, they didn't take theirs.
All credit determined to enjoy their big day out. Their vocal backing helped produce a razor-sharp atmosphere at Villa Park. The early omens looked good for the underdogs. They battled for everything, and if Ben Morley's header had had more direction, it would have been egg-on-face time for Villa. John Gregory's side were looking distinctly below par, but on the stroke of half-time, it all changed. Watson and Hendry combining, and Stan Collymore giving Villa a distinctly flattering half-time lead. It was rough justice. In the second half, a touch of real class. Villa's second goal had quality stamped all over it. Stan Collymore working space down the left. The cross was perfection, and the smallest man on the pitch, Julian Joachim, at 5'6", headed Villa further in front. It was effectively game over. The compliment was repaid 10 minutes later. Joachim's pace taking him clear of the Hull defenders. The cross was devastating. Collymore again applying the finishing touch. But you couldn't fault Hull City for effort, and from this free kick, David De Rea forced Oaks to tip over. In the end, though, no FA Cup tale of the unexpected. Maybe next season.
Disappointing. Over 200.
West Brom goalkeeper Phil Whitehead paid twice for an error of judgment at Dean Court. His challenge on Steve Fletcher earned him a yellow card and Bournemouth a free kick. Neil Young took it, and the self-same Fletcher's header was pushed out to Eddie Howe. There's a smile on the face of a club that not so long ago was staring at extinction.
Oldham Athletic could find themselves in trouble after an object was thrown at referee Paul Durkin. The incident happened just before half-time. Chelsea appeared to have taken the lead through Dennis Wise, but the goal was disallowed for handball by Babayaro. It was at that point that something was thrown at the referee, and the police had to intervene. Things didn't go exactly to script. It wasn't until the 68th minute when Gianluca Vialli put Chelsea ahead. The Chelsea player-manager, fond of scoring in the Cup this season, he'd already notched 6 prior to today's tie. And he scored a second for Chelsea in the 75th minute to take them through to round 4.
Mike Reid, in charge at St James's Park, soon found himself facing the decision that confronted Dermot Gallagher a week ago. Shay Given tried to claim the ball hit his body. He could hardly have maintained that he wasn't out of his area. Mr Reid, never one to shirk an unpopular decision, nevertheless took the opportunity to consult one of his assistants before reducing Newcastle to 10 men. Thus encouraged, Palace sensed their chance. Clinton Morrison from the right, Lee Bradbury with the header, an upset in the making. But as the game progressed, Newcastle began to look the team more likely. Soon after the break, Warren Barton's free kick, chested on by Alan Shearer, and Gary Speed made the most of the chance. The England striker, captain for the day, then won the game for a very relieved Newcastle. Barton's pass, Shearer from close range. The bad news was that Duncan Ferguson is likely to be out for a couple of months.
Wimbledon are on the FA Cup march to Wembley again, but this game turned nasty with 3 players sent off at Selhurst Park. Wimbledon in good form just now at home, 5 straight wins, but City thought they'd gone in front through Paul Dickoff's excellent volley after an hour. His goal disallowed though for offside. Minutes later, the deciding goal was scored by Carl Court. Manchester City had chances to clear, but they didn't, and it was to prove very costly as the Premiership side edged in front. But a good afternoon for Carl Court turned sour. He received his marching orders after a scrap with Andy Morrison, who was also ordered off. Both players were involved in a real argy-bargy, and the referee was left with no alternative. Red for Morrison and red for Court. Wimbledon were then reduced to 9 men when Jason Ewell was ordered off for a second bookable offence. But 9 men held out to beat 10. Wimbledon through to round 4.
Leicester won this Midlands derby with a performance of quality. Indeed, it was less of a cup tie and more of a goal of the season competition for the Leicester players, which started on 20 minutes when Emile Heskey's sleight of foot brought the very best out of Frank Sinclair. Leicester are already through to the last 4 of the League Cup, and they underlined their FA Cup ambitions with a second 6 minutes later. Robert Ullathorne making the most of his good fortune. But for all their attacking prowess, Leicester's defending wasn't quite as impressive, and that gave Steve Robinson the chance to bring the First Division side right back into it just before half-time. But Leicester and Heskey were in irresistible form. The youngster produced another moment of magic on 51 minutes to set up Tony Cutty for the third. Martin O'Neill says that Steve Guppy is the best left-sided player in the country at present, but he's got a decent right foot too, as he proved with the help of a slight deflection with 20 minutes to go. Trevor Francis can be proud of the way his players stuck to the task, though. They scored a late consolation when Dele Adebola pounced in the last minute, but the afternoon already belonged to Leicester.
Blackburn last met Charlton in the FA Cup third round 22 years ago and won after a replay. Here they took the lead just before half-time, the scorer Kevin Davis rising above the doubts. Just before the end, Sasha Ilic deserted his post as Charlton went looking for the goal that would have duplicated the 1977 result at the Valley. But when you're caught, it's a long way back. Ilic made it most of the way, but couldn't get there in time to prevent Jason Wilcox adding another line to Brian Kidd's increasingly impressive.
Steve Froggatt with the first for Coventry. Noel Whelan lost his marker to head in the second, and his 7th of the season. Froggatt's in great form just now, and Macclesfield had no answer to his trickery. Stephen Payne won't remember his first senior goal with much pleasure. Uncharitable Coventry didn't ease up. Darren Huckabee made it 4 on the hour. And he made it 5 not long after. Huckabee turned provider for George Boateng 2 minutes before the end, an FA Cup goal to add to his one in the Worthington Cup. And there was still time for Huckabee to claim the match ball. Not a very happy new year for Sammy McIlroy, and Macclesfield sunk 7 to Walsall in last year's competition. Coventry City 7, Macclesfield 0. He fancied their chances of an upset, but Dion Burton had other ideas. 1-0 on the quarter hour. Dean Sturridge set up that first goal, and he was involved in the second too. Paul Watton pulled him down to give Stefano Iranio the chance to score his first FA Cup goal. It might have been 3 before it was. Paul Watton handled to concede another penalty. But this time, Iranio's spot kick didn't find the target, unless he was aiming for the post, of course. But 3 it eventually was. A second for Dion Burton, and a final score of Plymouth 0, Derby County 3.
Fans are used to the idea of going out in round 3, but it's doubtful if they'll ever get used to Scott Taylor's shocking early miss, with the Ipswich defenders missing in action. And when that happens, you know it's not going to be your day. John McGreal's flashing header into his own net put the tin hat on it. Tranmere 0, Ipswich 1.
2 of the First Division's in-form teams met at Valley Parade, and it was Bradford, with 5 wins and a draw in their previous 6 games, who took the lead. That's sweet 16 goals now for Lee Mills. Jamie Lawrence, on the other hand, was still waiting for his first, but this one was worth waiting for. And so was John McDermott's first of the season. Though it didn't stop Bradford from reaching round 4. And nor did Andy O'Brien's sending off late on for 2 yellow card offences. Final score at Valley Parade, Bradford City 2, Grimsby 1.
Here's an object lesson, how not to play the offside trap. Robbie Keane almost missed the game through injury, but was never going to miss that. But enter Scott Sellers. And after that from Sellers, a little whine from Wolves. But they gained revenge for Bolton knocking them out 6 years ago. Michael Gilk's cross, brilliantly converted by Keane to leave Wolves the happy wanderers. And last season's semi-finalists are off and running again. Bolton 1, Wolves 2.
Huddersfield have appeared in 5 FA Cup finals, but you'd have been claiming the old age pension a few years if you can recall their only victory in 1922. They rode their luck at Loftus Road. The only goal from local boy Wayne Allison. That's a peach of a header no matter what way you look at it. QPR 0, Huddersfield 1.
Barnsley were marginally the better team in this poor game at the county ground. Both Craig Hignett and Don Goodman took it out on the same post. Bobby Howe came close for Swindon, but they'll need a replay. Swindon 0, Barnsley 0.
Bury haven't reached the 4th round in 13 years, and they were blown away in the Manchester derby. Derek McInnes shaking the Christmas cobwebs out of the woodwork, and Angels have always been at the right place at this time of year. Brett Angel, no exception. They quickly struck again. Ian Moore's cross forcing the error from Chris Laketti. The only luck he's got is half his surname. Moore's constant tormenting provided more reward. Colin Woodthorpe obliging in the centre. Bury buried by 3 goals in the first 26 minutes. Bury 0, Stockport 3.
There isn't a side in the country who need a prolonged cup run more than cash-strapped Oxford, and they were in charge from the moment Dean Windass brought his seasonal tally to a round dozen at Gresty Road. He's the one without the hat. The second, just before the break, was a real mess. 8 Crewe defenders inside the 6-yard box. None of them picked up Matt Murphy. It was no consolation for Crewe, but easily the best goal of the game came from them. Oxford failed to clear a corner. Mark Rivers laid it back, and Seth Johnson's volley simply irresistible. But it only served to rev up Oxford United. The deep corner not cleared by Jason Kearton, under pressure from Mark Watson, and Matt Murphy doubled his money for Oxford. Crewe 1, Oxford United 3. Worthington Cup semi-finalists and runaway Division 1 leaders Sunderland had been a shade rusty either side of Christmas, and they knew they had to be at their most professional at Sincil Bank, especially when Martin Scott was taken away on a stretcher after just 11 minutes. It was a blow, but 4 later they seized the initiative. Michael Gray with a buccaneering run from wing-back, Danny Dicchio the measured layoff, and the finish came from recent evidence signing Gavin McCann. His first for the club. We all need a bit of luck sometime. But Sunderland ended the match a man light. Darren Williams, who'd run the show from midfield, shown a second yellow, but no one was complaining at the Stadium of Light, especially Peter Reid. Lincoln 0, Sunderland 1.
I thought we coped with everything.
Play with Hendon in round 1, a penalty shootout against Wigan in the second. So even after Tony Garcia rattled a post, Notts County weren't in too much of a sweat at Bramall Lane. Mind you, when you fall behind to a goal of this quality, doubts are sure to creep in. Wayne Quinn with the pinpoint cross, Marcello the ripper of a header. The Blades still needed some insurance, and just before the break, Nicky Marker should have provided it. He didn't. And 20 into the restart, County made him pay. No need to ask who put the knife in. Gary Jones, his 4th of the competition already. Would there be a hero now? Well, it should have been Michael Twiss, but it wasn't the net shaking, but the fans in the back row. Sheffield United 1, Notts County 1.
Wrexham beat Scunthorpe 2 years ago and made the quarter-finals, and they're through to the 4th round after a 7-goal thriller at the racecourse. Scunny's Richard Logan put them on their way after wrong-footing his own keeper. At the start of the second half, they made it 2. Carl Connolly bulldozing his way through at the far post. Scunthorpe gave themselves hope 3 minutes later. Substitute Steve Howsham heading in off keeper Mark Cartwright's knees. But they were 3-1 down almost as quickly. Martin Chalk and Connolly combining well, and Howsham's touch at that end not nearly as effective as his header at the other. Connolly will never score a simpler goal. But then a scorching Scunthorpe fight back. John Eyre gave them an air of hope. Peter Ward's deflection all important. Before Paul Harsley equalised in breathtaking style. Pick that one out. Scunthorpe were dreaming of the replay, or dreaming of something, when Dave Brammer strolled through. Connolly on hand for an injury time winner. His hat-trick, Wrexham's safe passage. Wrexham 4, Scunthorpe 3.
Bristol Rovers had blazed 8 goals without reply in the first 2 rounds of the FA Cup, so there was no shortage of confidence when they rolled into Millmore. The only goal couldn't have come at a better time. Stefan Leone signed from Metz in the summer with his first for the club. Jason Roberts put him in, but it was hands on the back of the head time early in the second half. Andy Roscoe spurning the Merry Millers, best chance of the match. Rovers thought they'd made it safe when Michael Meeker stole in near the end, but boss Ian Holloway knew his boys were in the hat for round 4. Rotherham 0, Bristol Rovers 1.
And Sheffield Wednesday are another Premiership side comfortably through to the 4th round. They beat Norwich of the First Division 4-1. But first the action from Old Trafford.
2 weeks ago, Middlesbrough managed what no other side has done this season, win at Old Trafford. That was incentive enough for United to exact some revenge. But news that Liverpool were waiting in the 4th round gave the match an even greater edge. United tried to kill off the tie from the start, but just couldn't find a way through. Borough had few chances. A Robbie Mustoe header flew straight at Schmeichel, but it was far busier at the other end. A deflected Nicky Butt shot almost caught out Schwarzer. The Borough keeper had to be at his best after the break. Both Andy Cole and Dwight York had one-on-one chances saved within minutes of the restart. But after Borough survived that, they hit United on the break. It was against the run of play, but Andy Townsend's shot was inch perfect. He chose precision, but given a similar chance, Andy Cole went for power. Ryan Giggs' through ball deserved a goal. The red tide was turning and Borough couldn't do a thing about it. Maddison lunged at Butt. Dennis Irwin put United ahead. And in almost the last kick of the match, Giggs made sure. Revenge was sweet, but getting Liverpool in the next round was even sweeter. Ollie Foster, Sky News.
An FA Cup baptism for Gerard Houllier in the Potteries for a tie that threatened an upset. But it was clear from the start Liverpool had no intention of slipping up. Berger's early through ball so nearly fell for Michael Owen. And while Vale had their moments, Beadle about here, it was one of their few attacks in a one-sided first half. The Premiership side were ahead just after the half hour, Owen taken out by Barnett. And while the youngsters' penalty was less than convincing, it was enough to send Liverpool on their way. When Paul Ince scored their second just 3 minutes later, after Babb had headed on Berger's free kick, it effectively killed off the tie. Had Vale broken through after the break, it might have been a different story. Babb's tackle, though, was timed to perfection. John Rudge's side certainly showed far more spirit in the second half. And at one stage, the Liverpool camp began to look just a little anxious. They needn't have worried. Robbie Fowler rounded off an emphatic win after yet more good work from Owen. Pete Barclough, Sky.
So to the action from Hillsborough now, where Sheffield Wednesday beat Norwich 4-1 earlier today. Richie Humphreys scored twice, that is first. Both of his goals involved the Italian Benito Carboni, who made it 2-0 after half an hour. Those were Humphrey's first goals for almost 2 years. Peraruri rounded Michael Watt to make it 3-0 for the home side after 40 minutes. But Ewan Roberts managed to pull one back for Norwich on the stroke of half-time. Then, in the last 15 minutes, Dejan Savanovic made it 4 for Wednesday, who now play Stockport.